Okay, so what we're doing is trying to find how much exactly to trim the strut bar out for. Luckily enough, we have a parts car, so I'm going to take measurements off of the hack job that was done previously to try and get a better idea of where to drill it and where to cut it, which we'll do later on this particular car. I'm going to go off of the only thing that's the same between the two. I'm going to go off of this notch here, and we can see it's not firmly attached, but we'll pretend it is, and we'll just measure off of there, find out where our first cut is. So we're about 2 1/4, 2 3/8 back. So we'll write that down. And then from there, we can see that we've got to be over at least 4 1/2, even 4 3/4 almost. And then all we need is our dimension down, and we'll do that from the edge. And this one's about right. The other one's way different than this one. We're down about 1 7/8. And I'm just going to make sure that the same dimensions work on this side as they do on that side before we start cutting. Yeah, see, this side is actually different. So it's very worthwhile to measure. So we can only go back about 1 1/2 off of this one. And then 4 inches total. And then down from that edge, they've gone way down on this one, but we're only down maybe inch and 1/8. So we'll mark that left hand and right hand, so when we go to the unobtainium tan interior parts, we're not going to screw them up. The fit seems to be pretty good down here. We'll see on the actual car. I think I'm going to use these bolts because these are way less rusty than the other ones, but we'll take a look and see. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to install a rear password JDM strut brace. We've already got the front installed. The rear came in way after it, like we're talking months after, almost 6 months after. The color's pretty close. That was a big deal to me when we ordered them at the same time, that they didn't have the front, they didn't have the rear. But I didn't want the colors to be different. I thought that would look really dumb at a car show if you had the front and the back open at the same time and somebody said, oh, front's red and back's green or whatever.
Well, it's nice that they're the same color too, because on the website they had a different color on as the demo.
Yes.
And when we got the front strut bar, we saw that it was a different color and got a little worried, but they kept it the same for the rear as well, so that's nice.
We kind of painted the intake and the valve cover
off of the website.
On the website.
So,
but it looks all right.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you take the razor blade and why don't we open this up? And here you go.
Don't even really need the razor blade.
It did take quite a while for it to come in. We waited over 6 months for this. But I think the wait's worth it.
It came with some hardware, but it's pretty useless because there's only 2 bolts.
Now, the 2 criticisms I would say are that
no instructions.
Hardware doesn't come with instructions. But
that's why we're making this video.
Yeah, but that said, now installation is probably a 2 out of 5, maybe even a 1 out of 5, with one particular aspect being a 3 out of 5. And
well, the cutting is going to be really
we'll go over
important.
that in just a second here. So there it is. Looks exactly like described, no surprises there. Okay, so to do this project, we need a 3/8 inch ratchet, an extension, a series of sockets, a cordless drill, a unibit that I've got, some sort of marking, whether it's a ruler, tape measure, whatever, and a Sharpie. We'll get to why we need the unibit and the drill later, because obviously we're going to have to radius the inner panels to fit the strut bar. Okay, so in preparation for the strut bar, we're going to take out the parcel shelf if you've still got one. That probably will not be going back in. We'll have to see. The inner panels, they just pop out. Careful of the clips. If you've got a tan interior, which is really hard to get parts around here for it, you want to take every precaution not to damage it, because if it's anything like here, you will never find another set ever. Okay, so this is the area that we're going to have to radius out. We've taken some dimensions off of the other car. We have a parts car, conveniently enough. We've got to go down, that's why we need the extension to take the 2 bolts off on each side.
And on that side, we need to cut the middle piece out as well.
Yeah, probably. And then we've got 2 bolts here. I've got better bolts that are going to go in there. So for now, that's what we need to do. Okay, so we've got 2 sets of 2 bolts, one on each rear shock tower, and 2 lower ones there. Those are going to be 12 mil, so 14 mil wrench. They're not going to be that tight. We're working on the ground, so nothing's going to fall out or go up or anything. So we want to pull those out. Really making sure not to let the nuts fall down the cavity, because even with the magnet that may be difficult to get them out. This car is in generally pretty good shape. It's never been apart, as far as we know. We've got all the records going back to the original sale. We believe that we're the 3rd owner. With the exception of a small amount of rust, it's in pretty good shape. It has had a repaint. A little bit disappointing. It does have a little bit of rust, as normal for cars in our area and Integras in general in the rain belt. Okay, so I've got all 4 of those out. No problem at all. I'm going to go ahead and take the lower bolts out. They're a 17 mil wrench. Maybe in a little tighter, because they're a bigger bolt, obviously. Okay, I've moved up to a 1/2 inch ratchet just to make it easier. It would be fine with a 3/8 inch ratchet. I'd get it off. It's just easier. So if you don't have one, it's not a big deal. This means you have to use a little bit more strength. Now we've got better bolts, like I said, on the parts car, so I'm not too worried about these ones. These ones are quite rusty. I could paint them. The other thing that I'm concerned about is that I'm not even going to be able to use these. This one is very tight. Might need to use Allen bolts. Yeah, like I said, this one is really, really tight. Once you break it free, it doesn't seem to be bad. So I'm just going to pull one of these out and test fit it down the cavity in the strut bar. Yeah, lots of clearance. Lots of clearance for the socket to go in, so we'll go pull them from the parts car and we'll come back in just a second. So we took our dimensions from the parts car because it had already been cut and drilled. So I'm just going to transfer those to the plastic because I really want to do everything that I can to make this a nice cut and protect the integrity of these, because we're not going to find another set of these, and these are actually pretty good shape. So I'm just going to transfer my dimensions, and then we'll start drilling.
So we have the dimensions drawn out onto the plastic.
Based on the parts car.
Yeah, based on our measurements from the parts car, which already had cut panels for a strut bar. And now we are going to start cutting.
So, like anything, I don't want to cut a square corner. I want to cut a round corner. So I'm going to, as carefully as I can, see, I'm right up against both lines. I'm going to try and do the same here. And all I'm simply doing to figure it out is drawing a 90 degree in my mind, or a 45 on the 90, straight up, figuring out what dimension roughly I'm going, and then coming up on that line, that dimension. A little bit harder on this one. See, we're pretty good there. Then all I'm going to do is take a razor blade and come down from there and come up from there. We're going to have to take out this cross brace too, so we're going to lose a little bit of integrity. Now, razor knife would be fine. I just happen to have razor blades that are very sharp, so, but whatever you've got. Stuff's pretty easy to trim. You don't have to work it an awful lot. It's just like here. I'm just going to start rocking. See, I'm already through the top part there. I'm not specifically trying to trim right up to the edge yet. It's actually reasonably thick material, so it does take a little bit. But once I get it cut, then I'm going to go back. See that wedge there? I'm just going to go back now that the strut is relieved and clean up all the edges. Being a bit more careful on the one on the bottom. I want to try and line up my two holes. Going down a little bit. Another method of cutting is using a Dremel or using something like that. Remember, safety glasses. This all depends on what you feel comfortable with, really. Hold that, please. So I'm not sure what gives a better edge. I think cutting can give a better edge. Go pretty straight there. clean up that, clean up the markers off of it. We'll get the other one marked and drilled, and then we'll do a test fit and see if we have to do any changes.
Okay, so it's about 5 minutes later, and we are almost done cutting this side. So it really doesn't take that long to do. And yeah, all we have to do now is clean them up a little bit, get the marker off, and do a test fit.
Okay, I've just sanded down the edges, so I'm just taking a heat gun and getting rid of all the little fuzzies. I just want this to be a factory looking finish. So I'm not trying to get the plastic off, I'm just trying to take the furries off from the sanding. And heating it up is kind of a good way to do it. And then just running my finger over, making sure there's no, just trying to make it look as factory as possible. Because I hate brutal cuts. I'm pretty happy with the fitment. One problem that we ran into was we were test fitting it, and the reason that I have the bar installed when I'm doing this is because when we were test fitting, we couldn't get it back off. It's not quite a perfect fit, and the threads have locked it. The threads have locked it down. But I'm pretty happy with that. Good thing too, because we wouldn't get it off again. Now to get the Sharpie off, I'm just going to use some WD-40, or sorry, Armor All. And normally, Armor All, usually if you give it a good scrub, it'll take all that off anyhow. It's been a while since we've Armor Rolled in the back anyhow, so wouldn't be a terrible thing. We'll go back later and do that. I think I got almost all the Sharpie off. We've got a good coating of Armor All on these panels anyhow, so the Sharpie didn't really stick that aggressively. Okay, so we're just going to install the bolts here. Again, loosely, because we're not trying to, at this point, bolt it down.
Because we still have to get the bottom ones in.
Yeah. We took the other bolts off of the parts car, and as you can see, there's the parts cars. Here's the ones that came out of the vehicle, much nicer. So we're going to be using those ones. We have a bit of a fitment issue. We've got a, that's why I'm in the back now and not working from the outside.
There's a small issue here.
Yeah.
This one lines up pretty good. Almost perfectly, actually.
So we'll do this one first. Want to get that one started. So the one aligned really well. The second one we've got to go way down. Just every car is different. Even though we know the history of this car, we do know it was in one accident. We know it was fairly minor, but nonetheless it could have unsquared the frame. You can see we've got to pull back by probably about a good 1/4 of an inch, I'm thinking. Something like that. So probably what I'm going to do is, instead of wrenching out my back, I'm going to go inside and I'm going to use my foot to align it, and then Jackson can basically put the bolt in and go from there. So that's what we're going to do. I think it's just a matter of...
Okay, so with a little bit of effort, we got And this aligned one in, and we got the other one in. Now all we have to do is tighten the bolts on the actual struts, and it should be good to go. Okay, so the bottom two are tight. Now we just have to tighten the bolts on the struts.
I left those snug down, but I left those loose because I thought it might be easier to align the bottom ones. And probably in hindsight it was. Hopefully slamming this down over the threads didn't screw up the threads so much that it doesn't seem like it.
That was the worst one that you're tightening right now.
Yeah. It's hard with how many vehicles were produced to get an exact one.
That's what a lot of people say. It either fits really well or has to put a little bit of muscle into it.
Because arguably it fit on the parts car better than it fit on this one.
Now, the cover for this side looks like it should fit back on.
Oh yeah, I think
the cover for that side, we might have to cut a little notch out on the top because the mounting point for the bar sticks up over the plastic.
Right, I'm hoping that...
So we might have to cut a little notch out.
I'm hoping that it's actually...
But this one will fit.
Yeah,
right,
but I want to get some armor on that.
Right like that.
Yeah.
So that'll be nice, but this one, let's see. We're gonna have to cut a little bit out of the top, or the front, I guess. You could probably just cut a knot, like a line, like a thicker line, right where this is, and just slide it on top.
Yeah, we're gonna see what we can do with that. It's not even. We're already missing one of the plastic clips, so I'm gonna transfer that to the one that actually still is there.
So this concludes our installation of the Password JDM strut bar. It looks pretty good. It fits pretty well. We had a few fitment issues down in the bottom, but everything worked out for the best. The only thing that we can see now that may be a problem is this cover doesn't stay down because the strut bar is higher.
So we're gonna have to trim
on this
it out,
side,
probably.
so we're gonna have to trim a little hole here so it can stick out. But other than that, it was a fairly easy installation, and all we ended up doing here was a little cut in the carpet so you can still get to underneath, and same on this side. You can still pull it up and get to your spare tire and your stuff below. But overall, pretty nice looking installation, nice looking strut bar.